My name is Margaret Louise Green. I'm 79 years old. I was born in the back room of a wooden house that leaned slightly to the left and creaked every time you prayed too loud. I've lived a life of folded towels, cooked dinners and bus rides, with grocery bags stacked on my knees. I was never elegant, never wealthy, never anyone's first invitation to a gala, but I was a mother. And for 34 years that title was enough to keep me breathing, until the day my daughter decided it wasn't anymore. Her name is Corinne, my only child, my whole world. I scrubbed floors in offices where they called me Miss Maggie and never once looked me in the eye. I pawned my mother's wedding ring to buy Corinne her first laptop. I sewed the same Sunday dress 3 times so she could attend each internship interview, like she was someone the world already respected. When she got her first job as a junior associate at a law firm, I wept in my kitchen with the faucet running so she wouldn't hear me cry through the phone. She climbed quickly: promotions, new clothes, a condo in the city. Soon her phone calls got shorter, her visits grew rarer. Then came Marcus, the man with the soft smile and cold eyes, wealthy, polished, came from a family that wore silk robes and drank wine with lunch. I met them once at a dinner party. I wore my best dress, the one I stitched myself. Corinne barely looked at me that night. Marcus's mother smiled like her mouth hurt, and his father asked me what it was like raising a daughter in those neighborhoods. A month later, Corinne stopped calling altogether. My name wasn't in the wedding announcement. I found out she got married on Facebook. The caption said, "Finally complete," and there I was, sitting in my tiny kitchen with a pot of greens on the stove and a store-bought card on the table, still unsigned, still waiting to be mailed. I didn't cry, I didn't curse, I just turned the burner off and folded the card in half like a memory. 3 months later, a check came in the mail. $500, no note, just a check. I stared at it like it was an insult dressed as a favor. The next week, I called her. She answered but kept her voice short, clipped. "Mama, I'm really busy. Marcus and I are trying to keep things presentable. You understand, right?" Presentable. That word hit me like a brick wrapped in lace. She said I talked too loud, said I dressed too vintage, said I reminded her too much of where she came from. Then she said it: "You're starting to become embarrassing." I hung up the phone without another word. I sat in silence for a long time, and then I stood up, slowly walked to my drawer, pulled out a notebook and opened to a blank page. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't write her name. I wrote my plan. Doing? Comment. Legacy speaks louder than status. I spent the next few days in stillness, not sadness, stillness. The kind of quiet that only comes after you realize someone you love doesn't see you anymore. Not really. I sat in my living room surrounded by the same furniture I'd had for 30 years, every cushion worn in just right, every frame still holding her childhood face. I didn't take them down, I didn't tear them up, I let them stare back at me, reminders not of what I lost, but what I gave. You see, people like Corinne think shame flows one way. They believe that once they cross a certain line, wealth, class, social standing, they get to rewrite where they came from. But I still remember. I remember sewing her name into school uniforms. I remember the time we split one apple for dinner, because I didn't want her to go to bed hungry. I remember watching her sleep in the back of the laundromat at midnight while I mopped floors. I remember everything she now claims is too heavy for her new life. She called once more a few weeks later, just to say she was changing her number, said her assistant would handle any future contact. I didn't fight it. I let her hang up without begging. That night, I opened my notebook again. I didn't write to her, I wrote about her, about the strength it takes to raise someone who forgets, about how legacy is not built on birthday parties or Instagram posts, it's built on backs that never got to rest. I made an appointment the next morning with my bank, sat down with a young man named Elijah, who called me Miss Green, with genuine respect. I asked him about charitable accounts, about foundations, about anonymity. I told him I wanted to leave behind something permanent, but I didn't want my name on it. I wanted hers. I wanted her name printed on every flyer, every donation, every thank you letter. Not so she'd be honored, but so she'd never escape the truth, that the legacy she tried to run from was hers to carry. Then I met with a lawyer, an old friend of my husband's. We updated my will, cleaned out every clause, removed Corinne from anything that could be liquidated. The house would go to a community shelter, my savings to a scholarship for first-generation girls of color, and the foundation I was creating, it would support single mothers, starting over, Women who reminded me of the woman Corinne used to call a hero before she called me an embarrassment. I named it the Corinne Grace Fund, the tagline, because every strong woman deserves a second chance. That night I lit a candle and sat at my table with the same greens I didn't cook weeks before. I whispered a quiet blessing to the air, not for her return, but for my release. I wasn't angry, I wasn't waiting, I was just beginning. The lawyer was surprised at how thorough I was. "You sure you want to leave her nothing?" he asked gently, almost hesitantly. I looked him straight in the eye. I gave her everything already, and that's the truth. No one wants to admit. When you raise a child alone, when you work your hands into ash to build a ladder for someone else to climb, you don't owe them another rung. When they kick you on the way up, you owe yourself peace. The Corinne Grace Fund launched quietly, no press, no ribbon cutting, just an account, a mission, and a promise. We started with grants, $1,000 here, $2,000 there, for women who'd been left behind. I reviewed every application myself. Women with babies, bruised pride, and degrees. They never got to finish. And every time I approved one, I smiled knowing the check they received bore the name of someone who once said I didn't belong in her world. Now she belonged in mine, and she didn't even know it. The first scholarship was awarded 3 months later. A young girl named Amira wrote me a letter that nearly broke my heart. "Thank you for believing in girls like me." My mother cried when she saw the envelope. I read that line 3 times, then folded the letter and tucked it beside my Bible. I didn't cry, I simply whispered, "One more brick laid," because that's what I was building now, not revenge, a monument. Corinne's name began appearing on event flyers, donation slips, digital newsletters, each one attached to women rising from the ashes of abandonment. She still hadn't called, still hadn't checked in, but I knew it was only a matter of time, because silence doesn't mean absence, and reputation for people like her is everything. She could ignore me, but she couldn't ignore her name tied to something she didn't control. And then, the whispers began. An old coworker of mine called and said, "Margaret, I saw a flyer with Corinne's name on it. I didn't know she was so generous." I chuckled. Neither did she. Word started spreading. People were impressed. She started getting tagged in posts online thanking Corinne Grace for her donations. And finally it happened. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end, cold, clipped, and unmistakable. "Mama," she said, "what is this fund?" I took a long breath, then answered calmly, "It's your legacy, baby. I just helped write it down." Corinne's voice cracked on the other end of the line. "You used my name, without permission." I kept my voice soft, steady. "I used the name I gave you, and I gave it purpose." She went silent, not angry, not outraged, just stunned, because for the first time in her polished, carefully curated life, someone had written her into something real, and that something was made of everything she tried to bury. She tried to regain control. "This could confuse people. It's misleading. It reflects on me." I sipped my tea. "It honors you, Corinne. After all, you're the reason I understand what survival looks like. You gave me the motivation to build something that outlasts rejection, and now your name gives hope to women who know what it feels like to be discarded." She breathed hard on the other end. "Take it down," I smiled. "You're welcome to file a cease and desist, but I'm afraid the foundation's already registered, in full compliance with legal documentation." For a woman who had spent years controlling every room she entered, my silence was the first door she couldn't shut, and the louder she protested, the more people praised her activism. Posts appeared daily. "Thank you, Corinne Grace Fund. Changing lives, one mother at a time." Her inbox was flooded with gratitude she never expected. Corporate contacts asked if she'd be open to speaking about the foundation at events. She couldn't even explain it away without looking cruel. And that was never the goal. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want applause. I wanted legacy, and legacy doesn't beg to be recognized. It plants itself, blooms quietly, and waits for others to notice the scent. While Corinne panicked, I was planting tulips outside my tiny home, hosting Sunday dinners with women the foundation helped, laughing over pot roast and peach cobbler with survivors who no longer felt invisible. Tyler, Corinne's son, my grandson, showed up one day unannounced, just 16, tall and sharp-eyed, like his mother used to be before she learned how to blink away feelings. He handed me a handwritten note and sat on my porch swing without saying a word. "Mom's stressed," he mumbled. "Says you're ruining her brand." I opened the note. One line. "Why are you doing this?" I folded it slowly. "Because she forgot who made her." I said, and now the world remembers, even if she doesn't. Tyler didn't ask any more questions, he just sat with me, until the sun dipped below the trees. You okay, Grandma? I looked out at the road, my soul steady. I am now, because while she tried to make me vanish, I'd become something far more lasting, unshakable, not just a name, a movement, a mother who turned her pain into purpose, and made the very silence she was handed echo louder than applause. By the time autumn came, the Corinne Grace Fund had grown larger than I ever expected. Local newspapers did a spotlight on the program, praising the philanthropic daughter of a working-class woman who had turned hardship into hope. I clipped the article and tucked it in my Bible next to the photo of Corinne in her graduation cap, not out of spite, but out of completion. She erased my presence, but now I was stitched into her public image, with gold thread she couldn't cut. Corinne called again, this time, more desperate than angry. You've hijacked my life, she snapped. People keep thanking me for things I didn't do. I can't even control my own narrative anymore. I didn't respond right away, just let her fill the silence with her own discomfort. Then I said, now you know how it feels to have your voice taken. I'm not trying to ruin you, Corinne. I'm simply giving back everything you threw away. She threatened legal action. She said she'd sue me for slander, for emotional distress. Monica, my lawyer, laughed over tea when I told her. Let her, she said. Every time she files something, it'll hit the press, and all they'll see is a wealthy woman suing her elderly mother for giving too much in her name. I smiled softly. That's not what she's scared of, though. What she fears most is realizing this gift is permanent, and she didn't earn an ounce of it. Corinne began declining invitations to galas, turned down speaking engagements, but the damage was already done, not because her name was tarnished, but because it was tied to something she didn't control. And for someone who built her world on appearances, nothing is more terrifying than sincerity. Every time someone thanked her, she had to swallow the truth that the woman she cut off had made her unforgettable, not by vengeance, but by grace. Tyler came by more often, said home was too tense. He sat on my porch with his sneakers half-tied and his heart wide open. I heard her yelling about it again, he said. Said you ruined her career, but Grandma, I don't think that's true. I looked at him. Good, because it's. He hesitated, then whispered, I think I want to be part of it, the fund. That was the first time I cried, not for sadness but for the cycle finally breaking. Because in the ruins of Corinne's curated distance, something honest was growing. Not image, not branding, truth. A boy who saw through the noise, a foundation blooming in broken soil, and a mother forgotten, erased, finally remembered, not through guilt, but legacy. Winter came slow that year. The leaves held on longer than usual, as if they too didn't want to let go. I spent most mornings on the porch, wrapped in a heavy shawl, sipping tea as the world turned quiet. Tyler would sit beside me, helping with grant letters, organizing fundraiser mailings, laughing as he tried to fold envelopes with official precision. He didn't know that every giggle, every question he asked about the women we helped, was a healing stitch in a heart I never thought would be whole again. Corinne eventually stopped calling. I think deep down she realized this wasn't something she could undo. She moved cities, changed jobs, deleted her social media, but the foundation remained. The name remained. The gratitude poured in monthly, testimonies, handwritten thank yous, photos of new beginnings. Dear Miss Corinne, they all began. But I knew who they were thanking, and the most poetic part, so did she. I updated my will one final time, left the house to Tyler, with a letter folded inside the kitchen drawer. In it I wrote, you carry more than my name now. You carry the proof that we don't have to repeat what wounds us. Let this house be peace. Let this foundation be your fire. The rest of my estate, every penny, every bond, every gift card tucked away in drawers, was marked for the fund. I wrote my goodbye, not in tears but in blue ink across pages that built something bigger than betrayal. I passed quietly in my sleep one spring night. No hospital, no machines, just the hum of the porch fan, and the scent of roses outside the window. Tyler found me the next morning, curled in my chair with a notebook in my lap. He didn't cry right away, he just held my hand and whispered, thank you, and that was enough. The funeral was small but full. Women I'd never met cried over the casket of a woman they said changed their lives. One said, she gave me my voice back. Another, she reminded me I wasn't trash. Corinne didn't come, but I heard she sent flowers, white orchids, her favorite. I smiled from somewhere she couldn't reach. Months later, a mural was painted on the wall of the local shelter. It read, "The Corinne Grace Foundation, born from sacrifice, powered by truth." Below it was a painted image, a silhouette of a mother holding up a child, not in anger, not in shame, but in strength. And whether Corinne ever stands in front of that mural or not, one thing is certain. She will never again look at her own name without remembering mine. Comment: she built a legacy out of the silence. If this story touched your soul,